It's 9 o'clock, January 22nd, a regular board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all commissioners are present today. The first item we have on our agenda is a couple of food service awards.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this morning we have 2 awards to present with your assistance. Each year, Environmental Services presents food safety awards to 1 school and 1 restaurant that operate in Stearns County. Candidates are nominated by the individual health inspectors that complete the annual inspections, and the awards are presented to the recipients based on the merits of the excellent work that is completed in promoting food safety at their establishments. This year's recipient in the restaurant category is Albany A&W Incorporated. Julie and Jeremy Glens, along with their staff, have exhibited an excellent job in implementing food safety practices at their restaurant, ensuring a healthy and safe environment for their patrons. They are most deserving of this recognition today. Accepting the award this morning on behalf of A&W are the owners, Julie and Jeremy Glens. Mr. Chair, if you'd please present the award to Albany A&W.
I hope that didn't come as a surprise.
The award? There you go. Should people hold it straight? I'm sorry, not to be particular, but
thank you.
Additionally, this year's recipient in the school category is a Discovery Elementary School located in Waite Park. Bonnie Molitor and her staff have done an excellent job at the school providing nutrition and food safety to the children at Discovery. They, as well, are most deserving of this recognition today. Accepting the award this morning on behalf of Discovery Elementary School is Bonnie Molitor, the head cook at the school, Karen Schreifels, second cook, Melissa Dombrowski, Wanda Ostendorf, and Patricia Schouts, the kitchen assistants, Mr. Joseph Happy, the supervisor of nutritional services, and Gary Ganji, executive director of operations for District 742. So, Mr. Chair, if you'd please present the award to Discovery School.
Thank you.
What's for lunch today?
Stop by. Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
if I can have you all try to scoot down if you can, please. It doesn't work good. You guys will all be black if I do it from that screen. Too dark. Sorry.
3, 2, 1. Very nice. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we have on the agenda is the public access forum. At this time, folks are allowed to speak 2 or 3 minutes on a topic they would like to speak on. However, the board will not necessarily address that issue directly, but may refer it to staff. Is there anybody wishing to speak at the public access forum? Anybody wishing to speak? If not, we'll move on to the next item. Consent agenda. Commissioners, we have one thing, I believe, added to the consent agenda in item number 13 with the refuse haulers. That's 2 additional haulers. So That would be a note as far as the consent agenda. With that, I'll look for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda for today.
I'll make the motion to approve with a comment.
Okay. Got a motion?
Second.
I got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in, we'll take a comment.
Number
Commissioner
11
Rush?
on there, was one of the issues you guys discussed at the planning commission, with that project on Birch Lake there.
Correct.
And I'm wondering, and I would guess this will come up down the road, if a review of, how some of these projects, are we treating them all fairly? Can we come up with I was talking to Environmental Services this morning, you have a LISA score for ag land.
Correct.
If there's a way to develop something, a format, where you rate some of these projects on, do they rank high or low as far as what could be done without, disrupting the environment, to a high degree. I don't, in discussions, there's probably not something that's cut and dried because each piece of property is going to be a little bit different. But, it just might be something worth keeping an eye on.
Okay.
Because we don't want to make it arbitrary.
Absolutely,
This one-
and I would like to respond to that, and that's the intention of what we're trying to do. Because we sat down, I believe, as a group of commissioners and with the planning commission, and we looked at some of those environmental things, I believe, a year ago, and we talked about enforcement of the ordinance, the policy, best practice, and we want to be consistent, and we don't want to say, well, this one passes, this one doesn't, this one passes, this one doesn't, and people are saying, why are you doing it that way? And so we want to make sure that we're being consistent in how we put our policies in place.
Right, yeah, because I know sometimes, you'll see in there where they'll look to NRCS for their guideline, but, understanding they're more of a granting agency, so, their guideline is, will they qualify for grant dollars if that project was asked to be grant funded? And there's substance to those, but, yeah, I just think we need to
Right.
make
Also,
sure we're consistent.
I think perhaps maybe the landowners and the contractors need to have a little bit of perspective about what we expect, about expectations. Some of them came in, I think, with maybe a little bit overzealous idea, and then they hope maybe we'll cut back but still get more than we should actually be allowing to happen on the shoreline.
Along those same lines, I received a call where the person was concerned that it's the same, pretty much the same contractor that's coming with these elaborate plans that are above and beyond. And so, and that's consistently causing problems, so maybe Environmental Services should be having some sort of a sit-down with that contractor, make sure they go through what is and is not allowed, so we don't, that will save a lot of problems at the Planning Commission.
I'll concur with that. I will tell you, the Planning Commission, having been on there now for a couple of years, I've got a lot of respect for the work that they do. They go out, they do their site visits. We had discussion from 7 o'clock till past 11:30 on last Thursday. So they take it quite serious, and they do a good job ferreting out all the issues and making sure we're moving in the right direction. So, any other questions? If not, I'll,
Just
Commissioner
really
Clark.
quickly, yes, Mr. Chair, just backing up what Commissioner Mergen just said, I do think the more if we have one particular contractor that's being pretty aggressive in these plans, thinking about the property owners and how difficult it is if they may be believing they're going to be able to do something only to find out later that they aren't. So I'm confident that our staff is in communication, but I think the more the better.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah, and the property owners go through this once or twice in their life. They don't,
Yeah.
they have no idea. So that should fall on those contractors to present a little better.
I think the Planning Commission is in agreement too. So, if not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item, we'll move off from our regular meeting and on to Human Services. Good morning.
Human Services Administrator,
And the Human Services Department just has 2 items on the consent agenda this morning, and it's on pages 195 and 198, items D1 and D2, and I'm available for questions if you have them.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the consent items.
I got a motion
I can second
and a
that.
second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank
Anything
you.
else?
No.
Okay, we'll just continue to move on. We'll go back to our regular meeting, Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jody Tyke, County Engineer.
Morning.
My first item today, I'm asking the board for approval to advertise for bids for our 2019 resurfacing contract. The map is on page 201 of your board packets. All of these projects are included in our 5-year road improvement program for 2019. I'd like the board to approve a bid opening date of February 21st, 2019.
I'll move that.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Mergen,
Second?
second by Commissioner Notch. Discussion? Jody, just a quick question. How are we, that's on the 5-year plan, how are we doing on pricing on those? Do we have a relatively stable price on materials?
Well, we'll see. Oil has gone down, certainly, but there are other expenses associated with this. There is a lot of work in the metro area this year, and so that bogs down all contractors and their schedules. So this will be our first bid of the year, so we'll see if that does impact bid prices for us.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
My next item is another advertising for bids, where I'm asking the board to approve advertising for bids for the 2019 seal coat contract. I'm also asking for a bid opening date of February 21st, 2019. Our annual maintenance budget does include about $950,000 for our seal coating budget.
Looking for a motion?
I can move that.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer
Second.
and Commissioner Clark, second. Discussion? Just one quick question, Jody. When I was with Sartell, we shared with our seal coating sometimes materials. Are we in cooperation with sharing materials with anybody with that?
On our
Does that pay for
particular-
us?
On our particular contract, oftentimes the township will ask to include some of their roads, or several townships in some cases. And so it certainly helps the township rather than having a very small contract. And when you have a larger quantity, it always helps everyone involved, generally speaking. So this particular case, we will have Linden Township, I know, has contacted us with a few roads that they want us to include in the contract as well.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
My next item is primarily for discussion unless the board wishes to take action. At your January 8th board meeting, at the Public Access Forum, a tragic crash was discussed at the intersection of County Roads 4 and 133. That intersection has been a 4-way stop since 2003. It used to be that County Road 4 was the through route and County Road 133 stopped. We had several very serious crashes in a short amount of time and made that intersection into a 4-way stop at that point. We also, around that same timeline, put up intersection lighting, larger stop signs, larger stop aheads, the red reflective strips that go into the posts for the stop signs. As you are all aware, we had a tragic crash there in December. So I wanted to give the board an update on what has taken place at this intersection since it was made into a 4-way stop, so 16 years ago, or about 15 and a half years ago. So since then, we've had 18 crashes at that intersection, 9 of which were actually the right angle type crashes. 4 were injuries or possible injuries, and 1 was a fatal. I know there have been a significant number of requests to the county board to put up the flashing LED stop signs. And while it's not necessarily a question of cost, my concern with putting up those LED stop signs is that the more of those that we have, and we get a lot of requests for them, the more of those that we have, the less effective they will be. They will kind of become white noise in the background. And again, because we get a significant number of requests, every single time we have a serious crash or a fatality at an intersection because somebody blew a stop sign, oftentimes people assume that, well, they just didn't see it. In some cases, these are people who are running the stop sign on purpose. And when you look at crash reports and you see that the person who ran the stop sign is from the area, granted, I don't know how long they've lived in the area or how often they drive through that particular intersection, but when the person is from the area who ran the stop sign, you sometimes infer that it was more of an on-purpose running of the stop sign as opposed to something where they just completely missed it or were slightly distracted or whatever the case was. In this particular case, County Road 133 in this intersection has about 6,800 vehicles a day, and County Road 4 has about 4,600. We're approaching the traffic volumes where we may want to look at some other type of intersection control. Now, in a rural area like this, I would not recommend a traffic signal. Typically, when you put up a traffic signal, those crash rates actually go up. Sometimes there are different types of crashes, but certainly the right angle crashes still happen when people run a red light. I would recommend against the LED stop signs at this particular intersection and would rather look more long-term in the next few years at putting a roundabout. That would ease some of our morning and afternoon peak hours, some of the congestion that occurs there. When there's congestion, that's what else you see as people are trying to get through that intersection as quickly as possible. You have backups in all directions in the morning and afternoon, probably from about 6:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning and about 4:30 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I know some of the people who've contacted me have talked about roundabouts. They, of course, do want the LED stop signs in the short term. It would cost between $7,500 and $8,000 to put up LED stop signs on all four legs of that intersection. So again, it's not necessarily a question of cost. It's more what it does for driver expectation or just those signs becoming white noise and people not necessarily noticing them. Further, they really don't stop people who are running those stop signs on purpose. Some people slow down, kind of glance, and they go. And I know, generally speaking, the average motorist probably assumes if they pull up to a four-way stop and they don't see anything immediately at the intersection, they can go. In which case, if you look a little bit in every direction, you might see if somebody is running that stop sign. I don't know that that would have prevented the crash that we had in December. Certainly, we don't know that the stop signs would have, and we don't know that the roundabout would have fully prevented a crash, but at least would likely have slowed down or made it so that it wasn't that severe right angle. So I don't know if the board has questions or opinions on this, but this is basically looking at those crashes and what has occurred in 15 and a half years.
Commissioner Linsman?
And the reality is you can spend a lifetime going through the same intersection, and it only takes one mistake and you got an accident. So there's only so much that we can do, and we can design these intersections to the best of our ability, and the rest is a matter of luck, I guess.
Other comments? Jody, I guess, looking at the idea of a roundabout, financially, that's a rather large figure. We have already committed our 0.25% for other projects. And so would there be safety money available to do this project?
I would look in the next solicitation to apply for Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. That next solicitation would likely come this fall. The money being available 2 to 4 years out. We can advance construct it before the federal money is available. We would just have to cover that federal money. That is how that roundabout at County Road 133 and 19th Avenue was funded. It was 90% funded with the HSIP program, and then the remaining 10% was split between the city of Sartell and Stearns County. In which case, or in this particular case, if we were successful in getting HSIP funding, we would cover obviously that full 10% and then get the 90% from the federal funds.
Commissioner Litzman?
Do we have incident data on roundabouts? I know, we've got a few. In fact, I recently made the comment that apparently Sartell is the holy land of roundabouts. So what do we know about that?
Well, I can tell you just from the experience that I've seen, a considerable reduction in accidents.
Really?
I will tell you, and also just for the movement of traffic, especially in areas, for example, along the River Road by Walmart, where Heritage Drive is also. As far as the flow of traffic, there used to be a tremendous line backed up at the stop sign, as County Road 1 would, just continue to flow forward. Well, that doesn't exist so much anymore. A very limited number of accidents I've witnessed since we've been putting them in Sartell. And actually, we'd be a good fit. I think it's only about 1.5 miles from the last one that was actually granted through the safety money. Of course, getting the money can be problematic.
What's the feedback?
I'll tell you what, initially, I think there were a lot of people that were afraid of them. I know that people had told me I'm not coming to Sartell because of the roundabouts. I thought it was just because of me, but actually it was the roundabouts, supposedly in their minds. Early on, too, I saw some folks that would actually make a left turn and go the opposite direction because they didn't understand about going all the way through in order to go back from the way you came. I have not witnessed that in the last year or plus, so I think people have learned to drive them. I think people now that are not stopping at stop signs and are waiting long periods are thinking, I wonder how a roundabout might be at this location. So I think we've sold them as far as the people on the north side of the area that have driven them. Same thing with the diverging diamond. That was a very new concept, and people were very concerned about that. But if they just follow their windshield and follow the arrow, it just takes them to where they're going. And actually, that has, I don't believe we've even had one accident since that diverging diamond has gone in. So those are very good improvements, and they seem to be working. They're a little costly, more so than a normal interchange. So it depends how you want to make the investment. If you take a look at a fatality and what the cost that might incur there, financially, but the loss of life, I think it's a good investment.
Mr. Chair, we do have several now on the south side of St. Cloud, including one over by the university, and then a few going on the way on 33rd Street South, and then thinking about connecting up with Highway 15, and certainly people needing to learn how to use them. But once they do, it really does make traffic flow more efficient.
Typically in a roundabout, the crashes that you do experience are going to be your minor fender bender, property damage only crashes. You won't have those high-speed, severe right-angle crashes like you would at a standard four-way intersection.
Yeah.
What's the maintenance cost on a signalized intersection?
With the new LED lights, we're not relamping them certainly as often as we used to have to with the incandescent bulbs. You have your monthly power charges, but you have that for lighting at a roundabout, particularly in a rural area. You need a little bit more lighting than in an urban area. And I don't have the numbers with me.
That's okay.
I don't want to pull them out of the air, but you have ongoing maintenance costs with both. And I would say on some intersections, a traffic signal is your best option, particularly when you don't want to give all four legs equal priority at an intersection. But when you have four legs of traffic that are pretty similar volume, a roundabout certainly works well. It's a traffic calming device, and again, you've all but eliminated your right angle crashes.
As far as making changes at the intersection, I know we've all received emails. I've had a couple of phone calls, as far as getting something done there. That making a change will not change what has happened in the past, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I understand about the desensitization about putting, a flashing red light there. I believe there's a flashing one up at Fisher Hill, a couple miles away or less than that. So, gosh, I know these folks are looking for some type of action. I don't know what, particularly what we can do, but I'd hate to see us, becoming the land of flashing lights and then even seeing the numbers actually increase. Commissioner Notch?
Well, I think just by us making, discussing this and making the awareness, you know, drivers also have to be aware, you know, because most of us, if we drive every day, see people going through yellows turning to red lights. You know, everybody's always in a hurry, but, you know, we just need to take that step back and realize, you know, whether it's a traffic light or a lighted stop sign or a four-way stop, you know, we've all seen it. People are in a hurry and they don't necessarily do what's right and obey the stop.
Agreed. And throw in cell phone use as well now.
And I think as long as we keep that awareness and you know, people just have to understand you know, when you're in a vehicle, you know, you have to be aware of your surroundings as well, so. And I would guess down the road, this intersection will become something other than a four-way stop.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
I
Thank you.
do have one miscellaneous item. I just wanted to remind the county board, you should have all gotten a notification. We have a public informational meeting next Monday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. at the Highway Department office in Waite Park related to the County Road 138, 28th Avenue intersection. The City of Waite Park and Stearns County staff have been working together to discuss what could be done at that intersection, which is right now only side street stop. It meets signal warrants, and we are looking at both a traffic signal option and a roundabout option, but we want to get public input at that particular area. And with the service center services expanding in the near future, that traffic is only going to get worse there, and there are significant backups. So City of Waite Park did contact us, and we've looked at a couple options, and now we're looking to get public input. So I just wanted to remind commissioners of that.
Commissioner Mergen?
Is that the one by Mills Fleet?
Yes, just on the south side of Mills Fleet Farm and Trout Wells. So I have nothing else unless the board has anything for me.
It's entirely optional, but if Jody and Joe want to offer some observations on the beer show on Saturday, it might be appreciated by the public.
I saw there were a lot of people enjoying themselves.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Stearns County was in good hands. It was, law enforcement was out as well, so, yeah.
You know, I saw that one law firm actually had a booth at the beer show, so I know those folks fairly well. I offered them the idea of a slogan for the beer show, and my slogan was, "We understand." And Joe had one.
Well,
Go ahead, Joe. It was pretty cute.
I'll save it for another time. The next item on the agenda is environmental services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have one item on the agenda for you today after consent, so that was nice. And Angie Berg is here to go through that item.
We're looking at packet page 208, agenda item F1, and it relates to a rezoning submitted by Mark Youngerberg and Novel Energy Solutions. The property is approximately 93 acres, and the proposal is to rezone it from R10 to A40. The property is located in Section 31 of North Fork Township, just north of the city, adjacent to the city of Bruton. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this last Thursday and unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning with the following findings of fact. The proposal conforms to the county's comprehensive plan, specifically Land Use Plan Goal 1, Objectives 1 and 2, and Goal 2, Objective 1. The proposal is compatible with present and future land uses in the area. There are no environmental concerns with the proposed rezoning. The rezoning will have no impact to public health, safety, or traffic generation, along with existing public services and facilities. And they also noted that North Fork Township recommended approval of the request. And lastly, the property is adjacent to the city of Bruton. So with that, the recommendation is to consider approving the rezoning for Novel Energy and Mark Youngerberg, and if approved, enact ordinance 584.
I'll move to approve the recommended action.
Okay. Motion, I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Discussion? I just have a couple of comments. That location also is not far from a municipality, and Commissioners, we also have one that's going out relatively close to Albany, and a number of folks have had concerns about, placement of our solar fields and where those are going to go, and possible encroachment or them inhibiting growth from, communities. So just as we move forward with our comprehensive plan, maybe we want to make sure we include that, so there's a balance between municipalities and the use of these solar fields. So a place for discussion on that. Okay. Also, just a quick question. Randy, on protocol, when we do a rezoning, do we need a supermajority on a rezoning or not?
Mr. Chair, no, you don't on a rezoning.
Okay.
You do not.
All right. I think in state statute for cities, I think we did. But
Right, there's a distinction between the two.
okay. All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
I have no miscellaneous items unless you have anything for me at this time.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Treasurer Auditor.
The first item we have is a request for a public hearing for some fee changes for the 2019 fee schedule, and I have Sarah Ush, the County Finance Director, to address this issue.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
This morning, I'd like to request the board to set a public hearing for consideration of 2 fee changes. One would be in the Auditor Treasurer's Office for land management as a reaction to some watershed assessments. And the second one would be for Parks Department as a result of the Parks Commission recommendation. So I can take any questions, or I have division directors with.
Questions about that public hearing? If not, I'll look for a motion to set that public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
Second.
second by Commissioner Mergen. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on agenda, we're going to talk about elections.
Yeah.
Aye.
So I have with me today Dave Waltz, the election director, and Roxanne Jareds, who also works in elections. I'm Randy Schreifel, the Stearns County Auditor Treasurer. So we're going to go over the 2018 election, review that, and also look at some of the changes and trends. Just kind of an overall review, we had a 70% voter turnout in Stearns County, which is higher than average. For a non-presidential year, typically we're more around the 60%. For instance, in 2014, we were at 59% voter turnout. So I think certainly there was things of interest on the ballot, but also having the higher absentee balloting, I think, is having an effect. We had just over 66,500 voters. We had 157 different ballot styles. So our school districts all had things on the up for election this year, so that causes more ballot styles. And with having 99 precincts, we get to have a number of different ballot styles. We had 296 candidates on the general election ballot, representing 86 jurisdictions. And we had almost 10% election day registrants. And I think that number has actually gone down a little bit from the past because more people are doing online registration now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave, and he'll talk about some of the new equipment we used.
Good morning. As you can see from the slide, we deployed new ballot counters. We used the old AutoMarks, and we used 167 of the new electronic poll books. So there were a total of 323 pieces of equipment that we deploy for use on Election Day. We have to test those, test the programming, test the mechanics, and then have them deployed to the location so they can be of use on Election Day. So 248 of those were used for the very first time, and I think we had a pretty good result with that. I know Roxanne's going to talk about the poll books later in our presentation. As far as training goes, because of the new equipment, we had a few more training sessions this year than we normally would, but just to highlight all the variations of, we have clerk trainings, election judge trainings, head judge trainings, healthcare facility trainings, we have electronic poll book trainings, and they're all listed there, the number of sessions. Each one of those sessions probably takes us about 3 hours to actually do the presentation on, but it takes hundreds of hours of preparation. If you've ever worked in a classroom setting, you know that you can't just walk in and say, oh, here's the stuff. We have to do a lot of preparation. We do a multi-phased production, so we use video, we use hands-on, we do question and answer to try to do the best training we can, and along with handouts. But as you can see there, we ran a total of 1,527 people through our training sessions last year, which is an epic number to try to get through. The calendar, as you can also see, consists of more than just election day. It's like the pastor who only works 1 hour on Sunday, right? We do a lot of preparation work here in order to get through. Our calendar already starts in May when our staff attends training, and of course you all know that filing opens at the end of May, and then we go through our training sessions in June and July before we can actually get to the first primary in August. The Secretary of State provides us with an elections calendar of tasks that we need to perform starting even prior to that, and it lets us know what we need to do and when they're due, and it's actually over 100 pages long. And we are bound by statute to meet all those deadlines and do all the things that are required. Go to the next calendar, Roxanne. Then we get to August when we have the late filing round again for the cities and townships and many of the school districts. We order ballots, we do proofing, and then we get to the busy time in September and October as we prepare for the general election. And then we also have, after the general election, we canvass the results. Some of you participated in those canvass. If there's any recounts, we do them after that. And then we also do a post-election review, which is also mandated where you've been involved in the canvass. We pick random precincts and go back and hand count those, usually for races at the top of the ballot. So I think we did about 3 or 4 races in those precincts. And just to one more time audit to make sure that just a random sample to make sure that the programming and the counting worked correctly on election day. So we do a double check on those. And they've always come out, fortunately. In order to do all this, we need a lot of staff. So there's a slide here that shows how many overtime hours staff puts in. 750 hours of overtime from the election staff, 294 additional hours from other county staff, such as the other divisions that work for Randy as our main source of people. But we also get some hours from temporary staff, and we piled up 2,974 hours of extra labor from temporary staff. This is the first year we've had to delve deeply into the temporary staff pool. I think we're still learning how to do that. It was a lot of work. We can't successfully run an election without a lot of help from the other auditor treasury departments. IT is very helpful to us, and also the sheriff's office provides security and screening for all of the extra hours that we're here and have other people roaming around the building. So it takes a lot of help and a lot of coordination in order to get all those bodies in the right places, doing the right things to get them done on time. Another thing people, I think is that the elections only occur in even years. So here's just a list of some of the ones we do in odd years. And the first list is from 2015. And as you can see, there's every year there's a series of township elections, and we have a large number of townships. And we assist them. Some of them use auto marks as required by statute. Most of them don't use ballot counters. But we help with the programming and getting ballots put together for that. All the school districts use auto marks and some use ballot counters, so we help with the programming, all that. So it really almost becomes a year-round job every year. It's more in even years, but there's something to do. It's not like the election staff takes the odd years off. There's always something to do. So With that, I'm going to turn it over to Roxanne.
All right, good morning. This next slide shows a breakout of what municipalities in the county are mail ballot precincts, and which municipalities use an electronic poll book. And the ones shaded in white are the municipalities that are still using the paper roster. We did have 2 or 3 municipalities that went to mail ballot in 2018 since the 2016. So.
And I think there's going to be a couple more that are interested.
So this was the first year that we did electronic poll books. We had 64 precincts that used electronic poll books, and we actually had 167 poll books used during the general election. And how that is based, it's the amount of poll books in a precinct depends on the number of registered voters. So it's usually about 1 poll book per 750 registered voters. And so in the training, we, with the election judges, the poll books are really meant to be a one line anytime. So when the poll books came out, they can handle both the registered, signing in the registered voters, and then also registering in new voters. So typically in the paper roster, you would have 1 line for new registrants and 1 line for the ones that are already registered. But with a poll book, it's 1 line anytime. They can check in a voter, whether they're registered or if they're a new registrant. And then in addition to the training of the poll books, we also held some training labs. And so what we did is for any judges that felt they needed a little bit more training or exposure to them, we set a time aside, and actually in the rental building that we rented this year, we set up some times to have 10, 12 of them available. They could sign up and at their own leisure and kind of play around with the poll book to get a little bit more used to that. There's the pros and cons to a poll book, as you can see on this slide. The training is uniformity, significant cost savings, post-election. It treats all voters the same. It reduces mistakes at the polling place, and it speeds up the closing of the polls. Some of the cons would be the cost of the equipment, and then also the technological inexperienced poll workers. So those poll workers that needed that little extra boost. That's the reason we set up the lab. Is some of them, it was the first time actually touching an iPad, so that gave them a little bit more comfort level going into the election. And then also with the poll books, it does add some privacy, because on a paper roster you do have a sheet of names, 10, 12 names on a sheet, where on a poll book they're really only seeing their name and their information. And then post-election, as far as that, it's a file that we upload to the Secretary of State's website, and so that can be done within minutes. I think this is the first time that I can remember that we've actually hit our deadline as far as having the voters' history posted to their account. So it does have significant cost savings in the post-election.
I think you can correct me, Roxanne, but you had most of that loaded within just a few days.
A few days, yeah.
And normally, for us to finish the process takes weeks.
Weeks, yeah. So this is the first time we did not have to ask for an extension, so that's great. And I think we're on to Dave.
So this is going to be the hot topic. Randy alluded in his first few slides about how we had a better turnout, almost 10 percentage points, and actually 10,000 voters more. And some of that reason is because of what was on the ballot. But a lot of that is, I think, due to the changes and the trends in absentee voting that were experienced. So this year we had 2 county-run absentee ballot locations in St. Cloud, one at the Service Center and one right in this room. 2 years ago we only had one in this room. We didn't do the West Service Center, but for those of you who were here and experienced the lines, we needed to add another one. And then most of the absentee ballots are mailed out to people at their request. So we had 3. The other one that we ran was in Melrose City to service the west end of the county, and you can see the numbers there, and they all add up to about 12,000 663 absentees cast. You have to remember that going back, and we'll see a graph on this, but a few years ago, for a presidential year, we had about 5,000. This is a non-presidential year, and we're up to 12,000. The significance of this, and I'll talk a little more about this, is they're not going to the polls on election day where all the election judges handle them. We count those, and it takes bodies to do that. The next slide just shows a map of the absentee ballot locations, and it's juxtaposed against the mail ballot precincts, so you can kind of see some of the trends in the county and how the voting is going. Let's go to the next one, Roxanne. So we have 3 for our county. This slide shows Dakota County and Washington County, just to give us a little comparison. We often compare ourselves to other counties and talk to them and say, okay, what are you doing? How is this working for your voters? Get a sanity check on that. So Dakota had 13 absentee ballot locations, and Washington County had 5 absentee ballot locations. So it looks like we might want to add a few more for the next time to try to provide a little more coverage, follow the lead of the metro counties on that. So we'll be looking at that to see if there's some areas where we want to do a little more in that regard. I just mentioned earlier about the trend in early voting. So the graph shows, going back a few years, and you can spot the trend here. We're up to about just over 20% of votes cast early. That includes mail balloting. If we go to 25% in 2020, we'd be looking at about 20,000 absentees. It's important to note because the burden for counting these moves from the municipalities to the county. When we do this, when a ballot comes in, or an absentee's cast, we enter that ballot into a state system so that the voter can track his or her ballot, so they know if we've got it. Okay, I know I hear a lot of questions about that. Well, I don't trust the mail. Well, you can go online, because the minute we get them, the first thing we do is wand them through, and you can go online to the Secretary of State's office, and this has been available for a number of years, and track to see if we have it or not. Okay, so you can at least be sure that we have it. It goes through a ballot board of 2 people who look at the ballot, at the envelope on the outside, to make sure that I didn't vote somebody else's ballot, or that the information is correct on there. Then it goes through sorting and filing, and then opening and finally counting. We can't do the opening and counting until the last week before the election. So when we were talking about 5,000 ballots or even 13,000 ballots, we can do that last week. But now if we're talking 20,000 plus, it's becoming problematic. And one of the pieces of equipment that we purchased last time was a central count machine that was, we could have never done it without the central count machine. But if we're looking at a lot more ballots, we may have to either lease an additional one or look at a larger machine.
Dave, I'm going to stop you here because it's a topic I was going to ask a question about later. Between the early voting and the mail-in ballots, the people that have the mail-in ballot, do they have the option of early voting, or is that mail ballot their early voting?
No, good question. They do have the option, and a number of people do cast absentees because they want to come in person. And we actually have a polling place open here at the county on election day for them if they also want to cast in person.
So if they fail to send in their mail-in ballot, they can, on election days, they still can come in here and
yes.
vote? Okay.
Yeah. We're comparing, as I said earlier, we're comparing to other counties, and this next graph just shows you where some of the other, bless you, where the other counties are that are looking at. And you can see that a number of them have moved up, are heading for 30%. I'm not sure where the top is on this. There's a paradigm shift going on, and I'm not sure. It'll level out at some point, but I'm not sure what that point is. So again, a number of counties have already moved past the 25% into the 30%. And there's no reason for me to think that we won't follow that trend. Here's some of the major dates for 2020. And as we know, there's going to be a presidential primary in 2020. So we're already be doing absentee balloting. 1 year from now, we'll be doing absentee balloting already for the presidential primary. And so our year next year looks like a long year. The legislature is considering making the presidential primary a statewide mail ballot election. So in other words, I think they're looking to keep costs away from the municipalities of having to staff polling places on election day. So what they are, I think there's a very good possibility, there is some bipartisan support for this, so the state can contract, and of course they know who all the registered voters are, and a company will stuff the ballots and mail them all out to everyone in the entire state, so some millions of ballots. We still have our locations for absentee balloting if someone wanted to cast in person, excuse me. So in Stearns County, ballots would be mailed to all of the 90,000 registered voters we have, and then they would return them. I was recently at a meeting in Ramsey County, which is always, I don't know if any of you know Joe Mansky, but he's a reputable elections person. He worked for Joan Grow way back in the Secretary of State's office, if you remember that name. And he's a great prognosticator and has many contacts, and he predicts that with a mail ballot turnout, we'd be getting between 40% turnout on the low end and 60% turnout on the high end. So if you do your math and see that we have 90,000 registered voters, we'd be expecting to get back somewhere between 36,000 and 54,000 ballots for us to count. It is a ballot tsunami. So we struggled mightily to complete 13,000 mail-type ballots, absentee and mail-type ballots in the last election. Now we're looking at somewhere between 36 and 54,000 ballots that we would count in the same manner, that we would have to go through ballot board, open, file, scan into the system, and then run through our ballot counters here at the county level. It saves the municipalities a ton of money. However, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do that. That's the trends that we're looking at.
Commissioner Clark?
And I'm sorry, I was going to wait until the end, but two questions. One is, on top of the mail-in of everybody who's already registered, we still have people who could register, and you'd have to be dealing with them. And then the second, you're nodding, so yes. And then the second question is, does the bill that is going through include money for counties? Or who's working on the fiscal note? Because clearly that would be yet another unfunded mandate otherwise.
It certainly is, and we are concerned about that, and I think the level of funding that's being talked about is insufficient.
Okay.
Will come to no one's surprise.
Commissioner Nutt?
Maybe with part of that, the conversation should be, is there election fee charged to the municipalities by like the organization running, like the county, because all the townships, cities, will save the cost, but maybe there needs to be something incorporated where, there's, when it's an even year, there's
the presidential primary is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of ideas floating around. I'm not sure which will survive the mix. Most likely, there'll be a mail ballot election, and we'll have to pay for everything.
Yep. More than likely.
Okay.
if past history proves.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind in the presidential primary, people are declaring their party, and that's something that that hasn't been tracked, and so I think there'll be a lot of people concerned about that too. So there is other concerns about this presidential primary that, after this first year may need to be addressed. So
This is one of those elections that's party-driven. So there's a lot of negotiation and give and take on this, more so than I think in the general primary and general elections that we have.
Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, and thinking back to 2008 and how crazy it was at caucuses, hundreds of thousands of people going to caucuses and people only then being able to vote regardless, they show up at one or the other, but they get to vote and then go home. That means, we were really limiting who was able to make a stand. So this is new for us. Hopefully, good, calm minds are thinking this through and thinking about privacy. I know there's been a lot of conversation about who would have access to any kind of a choice on what party one was choosing to go with. But glad that you all are involved. But I think the whole point is trying, if we had hundreds of thousands of people in 2008 and again in 2016, thinking about ways to really have better access so that people can vote.
Commissioner Lensmeyer?
Are you far enough into the process to be able to tell in presidential primaries declaring party, are there only going to be 2 flavors because there's more than?
Right.
Excuse me, Commissioner Linsmeyer, the potential is there for 4 parties to be on this ballot.
Okay.
They wouldn't be national, but there were 2 parties in the last election that got major party status in Minnesota by getting, I think it's 5% of the vote. So then there's some question about how does the ballot layout work? Do you use the front and the back? Do you use 4 corners? Do you try to squeeze everybody into 4 columns? What's the rotations? What's the base order? There are all kinds of questions that the legislature in their wisdom will figure out and inform us of in due time.
So if you declare something besides, well, it's probably too early in the process to be able to determine this. So if you declare something besides the 2 major parties, can you still vote for one of the candidates for a major party?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I think in an effort to make things better, they might have made it worse.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of input into those questions.
I understand. You know.
We're just trying to figure out how we're going to count between 36,000 and 54,000 ballots.
If it goes that way.
If it goes that way. It's interesting that oftentimes if I do get a call from someone who's moved in from out of state, they ask, well, where's the spot where I declare my party? Because I think many other states do have that system.
Mm-hmm.
We have avoided that to this point. So.
If I may interrupt, do we have any other pending legislation that might be affecting the 2020 that we would be reacting to?
Well, there's a number of election bills out there. Both the Auditors Association works with the Secretary of State's office pretty closely and comes up with election legislation. But there's also, a lot of election legislation that comes from everywhere. So some of it, we certainly would like to see some things passed because administratively things can be made easier, but a little bit handicapped with that.
A bill was not passed last year, so.
There was a lot of things in that omnibus bill that didn't get passed, yeah.
So now it kind of, things start to pile up a little bit for this year.
Okay.
Any more questions on that interesting topic? Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is just in general elections for the future going forward. We need to increase our opportunities for online training. You saw some of the hours and the numbers that we run through for training classes, and we have an online program. We think it should be improved, and we may require the experienced judges who've been through more than 2 elections, to go that route and focus our attentions more on the new election judges, spend a little more time and focus with them. It's awkward sometimes to put people who've never been through an election before in the same room with people who've gone through 5 elections. They have different sets of questions and different levels of understandings, but we put them all in one class. So if we can focus some people more towards online, it would ease our burden for the number of sessions that we have to be out of the office to train on, and then maybe we could tailor our trainings a little more to help the newer judges. We do need to do some more outreach. We don't do much, and we probably should do more. We ought to do more. So we're looking for partners. One idea that we have is to approach community education. They deal with educating adults, and that might be a partner, and they may have other ideas for us. So we're open to suggestions and ideas about how to do community outreach. If we can get more people registered ahead of time, speeds up the process in the polling places. If we can explain to people a little more about how to vote a ballot, speeds up time and is less confusion for people and makes them more comfortable. And we just talked about some of the options about even going online to find out if your absentee ballot has been received. Most people aren't aware of that feature. So there's some education and information that we could get out, and we just have to find the right venue to do it because we have 4 staff. We can't travel around the state. You saw what our calendar looks like, so we need to partner with some people who will assist us with this. We've been asked to do more with school district special elections. They rely more and more on our expertise. I think you saw on the calendar how many school district special elections there are. I know I and Roxanne have been asked to actually be on site on election day in the school district elections to participate or to offer guidance to, they're not elections people, but yet the superintendent and the school board are the people who are in charge of elections, and it doesn't hurt to have our expertise on staff if questions do arise. So we've been doing more of that than we have in the past. As I mentioned earlier, depending on what we're looking at in 2020 for the presidential election, we may need some larger size ballot counters, some more high-speed, large capacity ballot counters, larger than what we have now. We're pretty much maxed out at the 13,000 to 15,000 level, and I thought that would last us for a while, but the way the wind is blowing, I'm not sure that we're going to get that far. So we're exploring some opportunities to either lease or purchase a larger ballot counter. Then the other problem we have is if we have one and it breaks, we're kind of hosed. There's not a lot of opportunity or time if it breaks on the Monday before the election. So, and then the last thing I want to talk about are future staffing requirements. In the past, we've had a manager or two and then relied more on clerical staff to get things done because they were just, we hand entered voter registration cards. We did a lot of that kind of work. And we're moving rapidly as we add absentee ballot locations. And we're supervising large numbers of temporary staff. We're going to need to evolve pretty rapidly from a clerical to a managerial technical staff in our department. We have, 300 and some pieces of equipment deployed. With that many pieces out there, it's like running, if you come in every day and say we're going to run 80,000 ballots through or make 80,000 copies on 323 different copy machines, some of them are going to jam. It's just a fact of life. And we don't really have technical staff on board. We just pick up the phone calls as they come in, and we really need, with the poll books and so on, it was helpful to have people out in the field and offer more support as we move into a higher technology world. And also as we use more and more temps, we may need, if we have to count all those ballots, we may have 70 people working as temps in order to do that. I'm just throwing a high number out there, but twice as many as we had last time. And so someone's got to manage those temps because they don't know what they're doing, and we don't get do-overs in elections. We have to do it right the very first time. So there's a lot of stress on the staff to get this right. So we need to plan ahead for those occurrences. We're always worst-case scenario planners. We can't hope the sun's going to shine and no one's going to show, or it's going to rain that day and not many people are going to show up. We always assume that the maximum number of people are going to be there so that we can handle it, because the alternative is not good.
That's all I have, if there's any other questions.
Steve?
So, being not familiar with the e-polling iPad, so if a new voter comes in, does he swipe like a driver's license?
Swipe, yes, they can. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that populates it all, and then they just review it, and away they go. Yes.
That's an option for them. That's one, yeah. Otherwise,
Okay.
we would hand enter.
Because otherwise you'd think it would take a lot of time if they got to be entering.
It does kind of help you also fill in some of the names as you go, so it tries to be as helpful as it can. One of the pieces of legislation we're looking for is currently we can't do an electronic signature. So when they enter that in, then we have to print out a slip and then they sign that, right? So we'd like them to be able just to sign right on the pad. So that's just an example of something we're looking for.
I think the feedback that we got from the election judges was that it was much faster, and I think for the most part, I really didn't hear any negative comments, and I heard many positive comments. I mean, there was a lot of trepidation about making that, but once they did it, I think we found the ones that were good at it, and yeah.
I'm sure as people get familiar with it, they'll just get better at it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So something we've talked about before, that I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what would be different for the county if we went to true early voting versus no excuse absentee voting. What difference might that make for the staff?
I think what Commissioner Clark is referring to is the last week before the election. If you want to come in and vote in person absentee, you can put your ballot directly into a ballot counter. That saves us the effort of having them fill out envelopes. Then the envelopes have to come in, we have to put them into the system, then they go through a absentee ballot board, then we open them up, and then we count them. So from our part, there's certainly a cost and labor savings on the county side, and it makes the voters much happy to know that they're putting their ballot right into a ballot counter. They feel more assured that their ballot's actually being counted. So it saves us a lot of admin. We have that 1 week thing now. We're supportive of extending that. I'm not sure how far out. It's a 46-day period if they want to go all 46 or if they want to go to 2 weeks. Most of the balloting in absentee takes place at the very end. So if we even extended it out 2 weeks or 20 days, even half of the period, we'd get the vast majority of the in-person absentee ballots going into the machine. My guess, Commissioner Clark, is that it will also up the percentage of people who want to do that. So we're looking at, again, now, that's not without problem either, because our ballot counters have 100 and some styles of ballots for 99 precincts. When we're done at the end of the day, we basically close out the polls every night. So, for example, if you're in Cold Spring, we take all the Cold Spring ballots out, count them up, make sure that they tie out to what our reports say, this, so that the number of people we think voted from Cold Spring equals the number of ballots. And well, we're doing that for every precinct. So we, at the end of the day, we spread out on the auditor's counter, and we have like 40 piles of ballots, and we start sorting like crazy and going through those to make sure. So we have to tie them out every night. So essentially, we're closing the polls for all the precincts that votes cast. But it's a lot better than going through the envelope process, and I think the voters are really like that a lot more.
And clearly, if something very unusual happens and somebody wants to change their vote, that's been part of the downside. I mean, right now, if you voted way early, if it's before the last week, you could change that.
Right.
But having said that, you know, if it was a 2-week window and staff was able to also start opening up and processing all of, instead of having the 1 week window on the mail, having a 2-week could make a pretty big difference too, I would think, when you're talking about quantities.
Right. So for the voters, it's really early voting already. We're just administratively doing this extra work. Yeah. So it's,
the ballots are here. It's just a question of how we administer the ballot counting portion. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Roxanne, but in the last 2 years, we've had roughly 26,000 absentee ballots cast, and I think one person asked to get theirs back, or were there two?
I think this last, in 2016, I think we had about 2.
Okay, so I mean, out of all those, we've only had a handful of people who've asked to redo their ballots, so.
One other question, and I know that we may not have too many people listening right now, but how many new election judges did we have this year? And then, this is an ongoing need, right? I mean, we need people to be continuing to step up, and when you're talking about all the new training.
yeah, we continually need new election judges. You know, not to say that the elderly folks can't do a good job, because they do, but certainly the younger people take the technology and grasp it a little bit faster. And I think we have seen some turnover, certainly in clerks and election judges. So yes, we need, and it's a good civic duty to do. So yeah, we certainly encourage that.
When we start our election judge training, Randy typically asks how many new judges do we have here, you know, in the room. So we just get a feel for how many there are. And I think there's probably, would I model line to say 10%?
Yeah.
Is that more than that?
Yeah, so maybe about 100 new judges possibly.
So there's starting to be some turnover.
Yeah.
Just want to really thank staff as well as all of the volunteers that come in.
And possibly the most challenging election judges to reach are experienced judges because they don't necessarily appreciate the rate of change in the process. I remember having a discussion with an election judge in a smaller jurisdiction, you know, outside of St. Cloud, and the topic of election judge training came up, and the point this individual made was, well, you know, I've been an election judge for years. I don't need to go to the training. And sure as heck, in this jurisdiction, not long after that, there was a disputed local election. And I thought about that conversation, and, I wish that, in my mind, I wish that jurisdiction the best, but I appreciated how the dispute came up.
Yeah, you're right on, Lee. It's 2 years between election training for them, so they need to stay fresh on it.
Oh, yeah.
And things change in 2 years, so.
Oh,
Yep.
without doubt.
Roxanne, Randy, and Dave, I want to thank you too on behalf of the county. I really feel good about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I don't have a lot of people calling me on the phone saying you guys are doing an awesome job with elections, but I think I don't hear any complaints, and that tells me that we must be doing something right. And again, the overwhelming number of people we have out voting and the number of complaints that are not coming in, tells me that we are doing it right. And also, I wanted to have this meeting and discussion now so that we're prepared for 2020. I do have just a couple other questions, and one of them is just reaction to the mail ballots. I think initially we had some of the townships and some of the precincts were somewhat opposed to it, that they didn't feel it was the American way to be voting. Actually, what has been the response from the precincts and from the townships in that it is an opportunity for everyone to vote, and also it's a cost savings for the townships, is it not?
Yeah, typically the cutoff is around 500 registered voters, and if you get below that, it's certainly a cost savings, and the ones that are on it are well below that. First of all, it's their choice. We allow it, but we're not forcing anybody to do mail ballots. That's a choice up to that township or city. The first year of mail balloting, and Dave can help me out on this, you will hear a couple complaints because people, it's new, they're not used to it. But after they've done it 1 or 2 cycles, they don't ever want to go back. So the turnout typically
kind of like the roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. the turnout actually goes up in mail ballot precincts. It's higher than your other types of precincts. So.
Yeah, going back a few years, I visited personally, I attended the council meetings for every one of the cities and townships that went on mail ballot, and we talked to them, and like Randy said, I made it very clear it's their choice. And as a matter of fact, whether they want to opt into the program or not, it's been available for many years. It's nothing new, but it was new to us in Stearns County, and I actually been opposed to it because I know that we have to do more work to count the ballots.
Oh.
We stuff the ballots, we mail the ballots when we count the ballots. So from a selfish standpoint, I haven't been super encouraging of anybody to do that, but I think we're up to 18 precincts right now. Again, the legislation that people are looking at, I don't think you can do it in a metro county, and the metro counties would like to change the legislation so that they would be enabled to do that if the municipality so desired. So they're looking at it on a much larger scale than we are. So they.
Okay, and then the other question I just had is, because it does grab national news and attention, and that is with voter fraud. Have we seen anything related to voter fraud or incidents here that you folks witnessed in this past election?
On election day, there's always questions about people campaigning by the polling place and different, mainly campaigning questions, but everything is checked out. Being a registered voters, there's procedures there. So, and then after election, also everything is checked out. I don't think we had anybody that voted twice.
I'm trying to remember if we had one or we might have one.
Yeah.
And I think it was from Wisconsin, though. They might have voted in 2 places.
In 2 places.
Is that ringing a bell? But we'll check those out, and we forward them to the attorney's office. We're talking a handful.
Yeah, and I just another way for me to applaud you for the work that you do, that really doesn't seem to exist more so than just in some people's minds, as far as voter fraud.
Okay. Yeah, the busload stories. Well, there's a busload of people that got trucked in there.
Yeah. It's not happening in Stearns County. Okay.
To the best of our knowledge, that's.
Put that disclaimer on.
Yeah, we haven't,
Right.
we haven't had any incidences where they found a bag of ballots in the hall closet, that sort of thing.
No. The systems and procedures are pretty tight, so it'd be very difficult. Yeah.
Okay.
on a large scale.
Okay, all right. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, we'll move on down to the last item, which is issued by Commissioners. Commissioner Notch,
I have nothing at this time.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
I know nothing.
No, nothing? Okay. We assume that. Commissioner Bergen.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Clark.
I only have a thank you to staff for being so good about helping me get up to speed with some of the issues that I might not have been as familiar, and just want to acknowledge that.
Mike, do you have anything for us?
I don't.
Okay, I don't really have anything other than the weather. It's cold and it's snowy, and let's behave
Be
ourselves
safe.
on the roads, and we'll hopefully see you in about 2 weeks. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Mergen.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.